The KOFB studio presents Milk Crates and Turntables, a music discussion podcast hosted by Scott McLean with his co-host Jack Calabrese. Now, let's talk music. Enjoy the show.
Thank you, Amanda, as usual, for that wonderful introduction. Welcome to Milk Crates and Turntables, but of course you already know that because you're either listening to the podcast or watching it on the live stream. We're streaming live over Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitch. All right, tonight's show, Women in Music. And without further ado, let me bring on my co-host, Mr. Jack Calabrese.
Hey.
What's up, buddy?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Man, you're sounding clear and precise, buddy. We are
Clear,
technically sound now.
Precise, a little concise. The Boston accent's coming through.
Yeah,
Screw you all, sons of bitches.
Yeah, right. Before we go any further, I have some. I just want to give a shout out. If you see behind me on the live stream, you'll see a Led Zeppelin 3 pinball machine that I picked up Saturday at Arcade Game Sales in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That is one of the greatest stores I've ever been into. It has every video game you want, retro games. It has retro cases with games with 3,000 games in it. He had 30 pinball machines lined up. So if you're in the market for a pinball machine or a video game, contact Arcade Game Sales in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Robert will take care of you. I'll tell you that. Also, we have a sponsor. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Great White Hot Sauce. It's small batch handmade hot sauce, but it's got a bite. It's got a bite to it. It really does. Go to
while we're recognizing people, you know, you've pointed out the Led Zeppelin pinball machine. For those of you that are watching, I just want to point out this board behind me right here was actually donated by my neighbor, Zach Parker. It's just a board. It's made out of, wood.
Great. Let me get back to the sponsor, Great White Hot Sauce. It's small batch handmade hot sauce. It's the sauce that bites. Go to www.trygreatwhite.com and order some. You won't regret it. That is some kick-ass hot sauce. I was a big fan of the other popular brand that I won't bring in because they're not sponsoring us. But I suggest Great White Hot Sauce. Go get some.
So is it just one flavor? Does he have a full line of flavors? Is there habanero?
He's got salsa. He's got salsa. He's got different hot sauces. Go to www.trygreatwhite.com. Yeah. Also, a friend of ours, Stephen Romano, lifelong friend, is a member. He's involved with a Facebook group that has over 150,000 members all over the world. And we're not going to say the Facebook group, but he's involved with it. And he called me today. He likes this podcast so much that each week he's going to send this podcast to 5 different people in 5 different countries around the world. So that's a pretty good boost. That's a lifelong friend right there. So we'll see what happens. We'll see where it takes us. This week we have Women in Music, which is one of the things that I like. As you know, I gravitate toward women's vocalists usually. And as I said in the intro, in a world where women are fighting for equality in pay with their male counterparts, in the music industry, women are right on par. They really are. You can't, if there's a woman with talent and there's a guy with half talent, they're not going to say, let's take the man. No, women will win all the time. I think, what do you got? You got anything for me?
Well, before we get started, I did say, when we selected this topic, I was talking to my wife. I was like, hey, next week we're going to do women in music. And she was like, oh, that's great. I was like, yeah, but a little bit challenging, pretty broad topic. She goes, what is that? You're supposed to be funny? Is that one of your little Jackisms?
Boom, boom.
Broad topic. Come on. She was like, really, you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. I was like, no, that's not what I meant. But I mean, there's an awful lot to talk about. And I have to tell you, I'm not sure if you had the same thought that I did, but as I was thinking about it, do you actually have to segment women in music, or should women just be listed as the greatest guitar players or the greatest vocalists of all time? Do they need a separate category? And strangely enough, coincidentally, serendipitously, the current issue of Rolling Stone is really dedicated to women. One of the neat things in the the latest edition is that there are some essays that are actually written by contemporary artists about the more classic artists. So, you have, and I have this wrong, but you might have like Taylor Swift actually writing about Joni Mitchell, or, something like that, so that there's a section in the current magazine that is all women. So I think that we're right on the money.
Oh yeah, I believe so. Our sponsor actually just messaged in. His hot sauce flavors are Reaper, Ghost, and Pineapple Habanero. That one is great. So there you go. He answered your question. He's not only a sponsor, he's a listener and a viewer.
He's hot on it.
He's hot on it. There you go. Pineapple jalapeno. Okay. So let's get right into it. As this podcast goes, it's an organic conversation between myself and my buddy Jack. It's not two guys going, "Hey bud, what's up? How you been?" No, we get into it. We dig deep. We agree. We disagree. We might even disagree tonight. You never know. It's an organic conversation. We have a topic. He has his information. I have mine, and then we just go at it, list for list. So I'm going to jump off. In one of the songs, one of the female singers, one of the songs that always stands out to me, and it's one of those songs I can never get sick of hearing. It reminds me of my mother, as a matter of fact. In 1975, Janice Ian came out with "At 17," which is such a great song. It's a timeless song. Everybody that listens to it, and her just the way she performs it, I don't think anyone could do a cover of that and even come close. So that in 75, she came out with that. But I'm going to go with one of the most underrated female vocalists, female singers, or female artists of the 70s is, and her voice, probably one of the best voices of the 70s, is Phoebe Snow. Phoebe Snow did, Poetry Man, Harpo's Blues. She had such a great voice, and she never really broke out into the top 10, or, she was fairly successful actually in the late 70s and early 80s in Europe and Australia, but she never really made it big in the United States, which is a shame because her voice was just amazing. She passed away in 2011, I think it was, she had a brain aneurysm and then a coma and then passed away. But Phoebe Snow is one of those female vocalists that just always touches me when I hear her music.
Why do you think she didn't hit in the United States? I mean, she obviously had a couple of hits. I think most people, at least in our generation, know those songs. And admittedly, I don't really know her catalog beyond the few things that I heard on the radio. I think partly is that when those songs came out, I was an idiot Kiss fan and probably didn't pay too much attention to it. Not to mention there wasn't a lot of female influence in the house. And obviously my mother was around, but me and my caveman brothers, we were listening to, rock. So, that's stuff we were aware of that was on the radio, but probably not beyond that.
Yeah, I don't think she really broke through because it really the 70s was a massive influx of female artists that came on the scene. You go with Karen Carpenter, Olivia Newton-John, Linda Ronstadt, Donna Summer, Carole King, Diana Ross. I mean, you get on the list. That's a tough crowd to break into, So I just don't think she ever really had the push, So what do you got? Who's first
Well,
on your list?
you just listed a lot of the the female singers, women artists of the '70s, but you forgot a biggie, and I know that you just rattled off a couple off the top of your head, but the biggest one for me is Joni Mitchell. Joni Mitchell is just an incredible star. I mean, you talk about longevity. I mean, she's still holding on. She's had some health concerns over the past number of years. But just huge influence, a musician's musician. One of my favorite things, there's a couple of documentaries that are floating around on Netflix and some other, stations about Laurel Canyon. And Joni part of that crew, along with, the Eagles were out there, and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. The Monkees lived out there. Frank Zappa lived out there and whatnot. And they all used to get together and play music. And there is a black and white photo of Joni Mitchell playing her acoustic guitar, just sitting in the grass. And less than 2 feet away is Eric Clapton looking at her. Now, Joni Mitchell is kind of famous for using alternate tuning, open tuning, like just real weird stuff. And Eric Clapton is looking at her completely dumbfounded, like, just how the hell is she doing that? And this is him coming out of the Cream days where he was playing with Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce and doing the heavy stuff. And I think that helped influence his direction in kind of going solo and trying to get a little deeper and exploring kind of the country blues and that type of thing. But a Rolling Stone, lists Joni Mitchell as one of the greatest songwriters ever. All Music basically said that when the dust settles, that Joni Mitchell may stand as the most important and influential female recording artist of the late 20th century. Some people regard her Blue album as one of the best albums of all time. It's certainly on the Rolling Stone top 500 albums of all time. I think it's in the top 10. And she has a number of albums that came after. Probably most notable is Court and Spark. She went into, jazz and played with people like Jaco Pastorius, Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock. Pat Metheny played in her band. She played with Charles Mingus. She not only played and found her own style of playing, but she actually produced every one of her own albums. And she actually designed most of the album covers. I mean, so you're talking about a true all-around artist. Only got to see her once. And talk about, misalignment. So a bunch of us from Winthrop, Massachusetts, took a bus down and we saw a show at Giant Stadium called the Conspiracy of Hope Tour. I don't know, there was 60, 70,000 people on. And they made the mistake of putting, here was the lineup. It went Lou Reed, Peter Gabriel, Bryan Adams, and then the Police and U2. And between Bryan Adams and the Police, they wedged an acoustic playing Joni Mitchell.
Ooh, ouch.
Bad slottage.
Ouch.
Bad slottage.
Yeah.
By this time, people were exhausted, people were drunk, and people were really ramped up, high energy, bands, and people really dying to see the Police and U2. And then you throw Joni Mitchell up there just with an acoustic guitar. I just felt, we were pretty close to the stage, and I just felt horrible because you could see the look of frustration on her face.
I bet.
Yeah. But amazing artist. I wish I had actually gone to see her and saw like a full set. I mean, it's great that I saw her, but it was 3 or 4 songs at most.
I was never a big Joni Mitchell fan. I don't have anything against her. I don't dislike her. I don't have any criticism of her. I just was never a big fan. Like, that just her genre of music, that style of music She has some good songs that I listened to, but I never went out and
Wait a
bought.
minute. How can you say that? She played the same type of music like Phoebe Snow or Janice Ian. It's that same kind of genre.
I like them better. What can I tell you? Just because he's Joni fucking Mitchell doesn't mean I'm supposed to go, oh my God, she's the greatest. She hung out in Laurel Canyon. And oh, I just didn't dig her, man. I'm sorry.
You listen to some of her early albums. There's no way that you can deny the fact that she hugely influenced certainly Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. You can hear a lot of similarities.
Oh, amazing.
And as a matter of fact, I mean, she was romantically involved with Graham Nash for years, and or a couple of years. He wanted to marry her, and she's new.
Yeah, I mean, again, I have no criticism of her. I don't dislike her. I don't. It's just her voice. She has that. It's just her voice. Her voice to me was that high kind
falsetto.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I'm just didn't. I never went out and bought one of her albums. Let's put it that way. But I never turned it off when I heard it on the radio either. I'm kind of neutral with her.
Yeah,
you know.
That's cool. Hey.
Yeah. I mean, again, she's ultra talented, and no.
I'll tell you the one thing that I noted when I was looking at her discography, and I think this is true. Certainly of those, the people in the 60s and 70s. Joni Mitchell put out 10 albums between 1968 and 1979, which was her absolutely her creative stride. And I think one of the reasons why, she had such success back then was she was putting the time in. Back then, musicians were working musicians. The Beatles put out, 10 albums in 10 years, probably more than that. They were in there and they were doing it. They were in that mode and they were just churning it out. And Joni Mitchell, the same thing. And there's a lot of albums or artists back then did the same thing. They were putting in the time and they were working musicians, not like, a lot of the musicians now, including, our beloved U2 that puts out an album every 3, 4, or 5 years or whatnot. How do you get into a rhythm that way,
They hit their rhythm. They had their rhythm. Their rhythm has come and gone. They were the kings of the 80s, You can pretty much say that, and into the 90s. But we'll talk about them another time. So I'm going to go into slight obscurity. Not obscurity in the sense of you don't know who she is, but obscurity in the sense of you only know her for probably one thing. But I'm going to lead into something else. Suzi Quatro came on the scene in 1973, right? She was an absolute original in the sense that she was the female rock and roller with the leather, the leather jacket, just that tough girl kind of attitude. Now, she didn't have any hits. She was known for being Leather Tuscadero on Happy Days, Pinky Tuscadero's little sister, right?
Wait a minute, didn't she have one hit? What about Stumbling In?
Yeah, she had, like I said, she had one hit, maybe two that never really, but that was it. And then she was kind of gone like a flash.
Suzi Quatro did Stumbling In with it was Suzi Quatro and some other guy.
Yeah,
I mean, you talk about her being obscure.
Yeah, that's right. She comes tumbling in. Yeah.
The other guy, I don't even remember his name. I think he was an Australian. I don't think anybody knew him in the States.
Well, that makes sense because another one like Phoebe Snow, she was popular in Europe and Australia, which it's kind of strange that the two women that I picked first. So Suzi Quatro was kind of a flash in the pan. She was, Leather Tuscadero on Happy Days. But what happened was in 75, this girl named Joan Jett comes along and just takes the baton from her, raises the bar, and becomes the queen of female leather wearing rock and roller with the sick attitude and just that I'm not taking any shit from the guys. Whereas I think Suzi Quatro might have been more produced. The 70s was infamous, like the 90s, and today is for creating artists. So she hands the baton to Joan Jett in the Runaways, and they take it to the next level. And
They had the same look, man.
yeah, except they were real. They were real, rock and rollers. They were.
So how much have you looked into Suzi Quatro? I read something recently. Doesn't she have a new record coming out or just came out?
I'm not that, like I said, I never followed her, but I just kind of was looking at music history.
I think if you look it up, you will find that she either just released a record or is releasing a record. And I think one of the reasons why she's doing that is there's a little bit of a resurgence when it comes to Suzi Quatro, because there's a documentary that is out or about to be out or about Suzi Quatro, and there's a lot of renewed interest.
Which is interesting because she was for a couple of years, at least she was on top of the world. She was everywhere because she was so unique in that style that she was an individual. You got Olivia Newton-John, and then you get this girl that comes along who's the polar opposite.
Kind of tough, kind of edgy.
Yeah, and people
a real strength that she had about her.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Go on. No, I was just going to say, I just wrapped it up with, so Suzi Quatro leads to Joan Jett, the Runaways, and then eventually Joan Jett and the Runaways, and then Joan Jett, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer.
You got to give Joan Jett credit. I mean, look, the trail that they blazed, with the Runaways is, again, talk about breaking into a man's world. I mean, playing hard rock, they must have had a long, tough road. And then, again, she met a whole lot of resistance with the Blackhearts. Got a lot of rejection. That my only issue with Joan Jett is, I think she's got a handful of great songs, and I give her a hell of a lot of credit for her longevity and for really grinding it out. But is there such a thing as a great Joan Jett record from start to finish?
That could be said for a lot of artists. Like we've discussed this, and it comes up maybe almost every episode, that if back then, and I think you referenced it last week, you get on the train, you go into Boston, you go to Strawberries, you buy a record, you bring it home, and I believe I had mentioned it too, that if he has 3 or 4 good songs on it out of 12, it's considered a good record.
Yeah.
There's
I'll
a
tell
lot
you, before we get too far away from Phoebe Snow, I'll tell you one of my theories is, Phoebe Snow was big in Australia and Europe and other parts of the world and not so much America. And I think one of the reasons is she didn't fit the mold. She didn't fit the build. I mean, you think of all of those other female artists that you had mentioned that were big in the early 70s, right? So what did you list? What did you list off? You listed off Olivia Newton-John, Donna Summer,
John, Carly Simon, Donna Summer, Diana Ross, Linda Ronstadt, Carole King.
Those are all strikingly beautiful women that are very marketable in a lot of different ways. Linda Ronstadt, gorgeous. Posters of her and whatnot. Phoebe Snow did not possess those types of looks, and I think that there's a certain amount of discrimination in the U.S. that unless you fit that mold, or at least back then, that if you didn't fit that mold of looking glamorous and star-like, that you could be passed over. And I think that Europe and other parts of the world were a little bit more open to looking at the individual and their artistic merit.
So I'm gonna go a step further, and this has nothing to do with anything in today's world, today's politics. This isn't a virtue signal. This is none of it. This is you and me talking music, and we never cross those lines when we talk about this stuff. But I also would say that the genre of music that she did sing wasn't R&B, it wasn't soul, it wasn't disco. She was a black woman singing contemporary, classic AM gold, soft rock
Folk music.
And if you look, try to find another black female artist that was doing that. Right? I mean, I'm sure if we thought long enough, we could come up with one, but they just weren't prevalent. They weren't in the mix, and she was in the mix, and she broke through at least and had she has a good small catalog of hits that you hear on the radio, AM gold, stuff like that. But I think that might have had something to do with it either. They didn't how do we market this? It's so she suffered that too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Tracy Jonas says no. Well, I'm wondering what she means by no. Does she agree? Does she disagree?
I don't know. I could say one thing. I am not. And Neil Freeman just messaged in, one of the listeners, and says Janis Joplin. I am not a fan whatsoever, zero, of Janis Joplin. I think Janis Joplin is overrated, and you can disagree with me all you want. I'm not changing my mind in this. I just don't get it. That raspy, whiskey voice, and I mean, how long was she really on the scene? She had that soulful voice, but it's like every song, there's nothing new to it. Her voice is, it's that whiskey voice, whiskey and cigarettes voice. I was just never a huge fan. I don't think, but then again, I don't like Santana either. So.
Well, what I think, Janis Joplin probably gets a lot of credit. Again, I think she was one of the few artists back in that day that kind of crossed that gender line where she was singing, bluesy and playing in the rock and roll world, where there weren't a lot of, women that weren't the leaders of their band. I mean, you could make the argument for Grace Slick and the Jefferson Airplane, and I understand it. What you're saying. I mean, her voice is probably an acquired taste. It's raspy. It could get a little bit too much. I think that the work that she did, there's some really amazing stuff. And I will tell you, I'm not a huge Janis Joplin fan. I like her. I like some of the stuff, but sometimes she's a little bit too much for me.
Yeah.
I think part of the allure of the Janis Joplin story is the Janis Joplin story. Kind of, and I'm not judging, but kind of regarded as the ugly duckling that was really looked over in terms of the small town that she grew up in, and became one of the biggest stars in the world in the late '60s, and really had the world by the short hairs to a certain extent. But Woodstock, Monterey Pop Festival, and then of course her tragic death. I think it all adds fuel to that drama and kind of keeps the story going. I think the question that we probably both have is, if Janis Joplin had lived, would she be regarded as the influential person that she is regarded as? It's an interesting question.
It is, yeah. That could be a show as far as artists that died young and would they have been influential in the future. So, who do you got on your list? Who's next?
So I'll tell you, just looking at some of the artists that we looked at, and I know that I've spoken about her before, but Patti Smith is one of my big heroes. Yeah. Again, goofy kid from Winthrop, Kiss and Queen and that type of thing. And then, Don Kirshner's rock concert and Saturday Night Live. And all of a sudden I'm exposed to Patti Smith and did not know what the hell it was. I mean, just completely opened my eyes. And we were just talking about Janis Joplin. I think one of the bigger Patti Smith fan right now than I have been in the past is she put out a memoir a handful of years ago called Just Kids. And it is a memoir of her and Robert Mapplethorpe, coming to Manhattan and aspiring to be artists and being like poverty stricken. I mean, no money, whatsoever, grabbing furniture off the street, living off the street, eating Jello and splitting burgers and that type of thing. I mean, talk about, somebody with humble beginnings, but really kind of interesting story all along. I mean, I love her music, especially, the early stuff, but I think that she has been largely overlooked in terms of her catalog. I think that she has a lot more to offer than most people think. One of the interesting things that I came about is that she, for a little while, actually lived with a guy by the name of Alan Lanier. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but Alan Lanier was the bass player and the keyboard player for Blue Oyster Cult. They actually, they lived together.
Alan Lanier? Alan Lanier. Lanier is how it's pronounced.
Yeah. They lived together for a little bit, but as I dove a little bit deeper about Alan, not only did he play with Blue Oyster Cult, which, by the way, when she first connected with Alan, she was actually considered to be the lead singer of Blue Oyster Cult. How would that have been? Patti Smith singing "Don't Fear the Reaper" and Godzilla.
Yeah, which are the only two songs they're known for.
But Alan Lanier not only wrote for Blue Oyster Cult, but he actually also wrote for The Clash. He also wrote for Iggy Pop and Jim Carroll. He actually plays the video for those people, the people that died. You know that song?
Yeah, Jim Carroll.
He's playing piano in the video. But she ended up leaving him, and then she ended up marrying Fred Sonic Smith of the MC5. Great Detroit.
Oh yeah,
pre-punk band, if you want to call them, and that's another show. But they lived out, certainly the rest of his life together, and he passed away from cancer. But she just has an amazing catalog. I think she's largely underrated, and I'm not sure that Patti Smith has the look to be the big star filling stadiums and giant concert halls. I think she's found her sweet spot, and I think that's kind of where she belongs.
Yeah. I like her. I have no problem. So I'm gonna move ahead. So in New Wave actually broke. The New Wave really hit in '79, and this was other than Elvis Costello watching The Detectives in '77. I think that came out. I know it's women in music, but I'm getting to that point. So there's a few songs that stand out to me that kind of really introduced me, put me over the top to New Wave, which, you and I are huge. That was our generation's, genre for a while. We were there right from the beginning. So in '79, the first song that really brings back the memory of putting me into the New Wave world is XTC's Making Plans for Nigel, right? That one I was like, holy shit. Now that's not a female band or a female singer. But this next two, then I heard Lena Lovitch, Lucky Number in '79. And I absolutely was like, when you first heard Patti Smith, when I heard her singing Lucky Number, I was like, wow, this shit is good. Like, this is where I'm at. This is my shit right here. Then she came out with New Toy, right? Also in '79, the Flying Lizards came out with their version of Money. The lead singer, Deborah Evans Stickland. I want money. That's what I want. Those are burned into my brain. The synth in that song, just her it's almost spoken word,
Too much synthesizer in that song.
Oh, here we go.
Way too much synthesizer.
For those that might be new listeners, new viewers, we've come to the conclusion that Jack is an anti-synthite. Yes.
Hey.
He's an anti-synthite.
So don't be calling me that over the air. That's in our day and age of cancel culture. I don't want to lose my job because I don't
all the synth pop lovers are coming after you. Okay.
So I'm telling you, I'm going to get pulled into HR. They're going to say it's come to our attention that you don't like Gary Newman.
Yeah. Or the Flying Lizards. You know,
or the Flying Lizards. What's your problem? We're
Those
going to have
two-
to send you to sensitivity training.
synth sensitivity training. Okay.
We want you to take these 5 Pet Shop Boy albums, bring them home,
That's
listen
right.
to them,
Study them,
come
listen.
back, and we'll have an open discussion.
Yes. So that led into 1980 when I first heard Brass in Pocket. Again, now that was it. That slammed the door. That was the mic drop. That was when I heard Chrissie Hynde and the Pretenders, or just the Pretenders, Brass in Pocket. That was it. That was it. Now, strange. I don't know if you know this. This is an interesting. Did you know? Did you know that her boyfriend was one of the students that got killed at Kent State?
I did know that, yes.
Yeah.
So
Kind of
you're
odd,
not
right?
going to throw much by me in terms of Chrissie Hynde. She's definitely one of my heroes. And recently I actually read her autobiography, which, by the way, is not very good.
Yeah, it's not like Morrissey's autobiography, which is like reading. He's a very unique writer. Let's just put it that way. He does write the way he talks, but
So if you go back to those days, and it's probably the post Kent State thing. I mean, Chrissie Hynde was just a huge music fan, and she always wanted to be involved in music. And when she was living there in Ohio, so this is long before the Pretenders days, she was actually in a band called Sat Sun Mat, or Saturday Sunday Matinee. And one of the other people that was in the band was Mark Mothersbaugh, who went on to form Devo.
Oh yeah, that's right, Devo. That's right.
Devo.
I always get him mixed up with the dude from Weird from
Danny Elfman.
Danny Elfman. Yeah, I always get those two mixed up. Okay. Chrissie Hynde goes over to England, right? Gets really deep into the scene there, and she meets a girl named Viv Albertine, right? Viv Albertine was one of the founding members of the Slits, right? Now you want to talk about ground, babe? They broke the ground for all those women that we just talked about in rock. Okay, the Slits were just absolutely trendsetters. They were groundbreakers. Viv Albertine actually went to Chrissie Hynde and asked her, I'm a little hesitant about starting an all-female punk rock group, which they were actually punk and reggae. She dated Viv Albertine from the Slits, dated Mick Jones, and she practiced playing in Joe Strummer's basement. So she was around all that. But she asked Chrissie Hynde about, I'm a little hesitant. She goes, just fucking do it. Like, who cares? Just fucking do it. Like only Chrissie Hynde could, right?
Well, that's Chrissie.
The Slits break out, and that's it.
Yeah. Chrissie, as you said, Chrissie Hynde was definitely around that scene. So, some of the tidbits that I kind of pulled out of the autobiography that she had written. So, she went over there. Initially she was around the scene. To a certain extent, some of those folks actually kind of dismissed her as a loudmouth, know-it-all Yank with not a lot to offer. But she and Mick Jones actually tried to start a band that just didn't, go anywhere. And obviously Mick Jones had bigger and better things to do. She was also in a band called Masters of the Backside, but she was asked to leave just before they fully formed and changed their name to The Damned.
The Damned, yeah.
So,
boy,
the other thing is she had a job, famous shop, Sex, which is where the Sex Pistols essentially were formed. That was kind of one of the epicenters of the punk scene. But there's a part in the book where she gets trouble with immigration. She kind of overstayed her welcome. So they hatched a plan to get her married so she could stay in the country. So originally, Johnny Rotten was going to marry Chrissie Hynde, a marriage of convenience so she could stay in the country. He was a no-show. So who stepped up? Sid Vicious. And they actually got as far as they actually went to whatever their version of City Hall or Town Hall was to actually do it. And the office was closed. And then it just didn't happen again because he had other court appearances or whatnot. But, eventually she found James Honeyman Scott and Pete Farndon. And, the rest was kind of history. That first album, as you know, what's that?
The drummer, Martin
Chambers.
Martin Chambers, yes.
Yeah, Martin Chambers.
Yeah.
Fantastic band. Just absolutely fantastic band. Riddled with tragedy.
Yeah.
So,
what do you got?
I'll tell you, my first big exposure, to talk about influences, the person that initially introduced me to the Pretenders was my dad. My father was the one that actually brought the first Pretenders album home, and biggest exposure to them was Phil Kelly from Winthrop and I were in line at Ticketron to get tickets to the Joe Perry project that was playing at the Orpheum, and the guy in front of us was in line to return 2 Pretenders tickets because their shows had gotten not canceled but postponed. And the guy behind the window would not issue him a refund because the concert was rescheduled. It wasn't postponed. And we literally tapped him on the shoulder and said, "We'll buy those off of you." And Phil Kelly and I went and saw the original Pretenders maybe 6 or 8 rows back, and they were a ferocious band, just unbelievable. Fantastic.
They would battle on stage for sound. Pete Farndon loved turning his bass up, and they drive each other crazy during the sets. What else you got? What other? I know we got a lot, but
so the other one, I just had to do it. I mean, and I'm not kidding. I mean, this is such a big topic, and we didn't really
it's huge. Yeah.
We really didn't. We could have done a better job at kind of narrowing this down a little bit, but this is definitely one that can go on for episodes and episodes. But one that I picked was Pat Benatar. Pat Benatar. Again, just like the Pretenders, early days of MTV. Pat Benatar, not her original name. And you can probably understand why she actually changed her name, but Pat Benatar was born Patricia May Andrea Zajewski. And I'm definitely mispronouncing that name.
Yeah.
But so she had an interest in music. She did, and I know a lot of people have said in the past that she was training to be an opera singer, and that's true. She definitely had some training and was considering going to Juilliard. But instead, for whatever reason, maybe she just thought that she didn't have the stuff or was trying to be practical. She went on to pursue health education, and she left school after a year and ended up marrying her local high school sweetheart, Dennis Benatar, who then went actually into the Army, and they stayed together for a little while. And she started performing in like open mic nights and that type of thing. When he got out of the Army, they went to New York to try to get her career launched, and she started to get success, and she ended up dumping him and divorcing him, and obviously added insult to injury and kept his last name.
Nice.
But Pat Benatar, huge, just monster talent, obviously, coming out of a tiny, tiny woman. I mean, I don't know how tall she is, but I don't think she's any more than, 5'2", 5'3". But in the 80s, I mean, just think of this. Hell is for Children, Hit Me With Your Best Shot, We Belong, Promises in the Dark, I Need a Lover, Love is a Battlefield, Shadows of the Night, Invincible, Heartbreaker, You Better Run, All Fired Up, Treat Me Right, Sex is a Weapon. Those are just, a handful of the songs that, she put out. I mean, she was just hugely influential back then. And by the way, here's a piece of trivia for you. What was the first video played on MTV? Do you remember?
Yeah, the Buggles.
Yeah, the Buggles video killed the radio star.
Yeah.
The second one was You'd Better Run by Pat Benatar.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So I had the opportunity to see her a couple of times. Talk about the early days back then. The first time I saw her was at the Berkeley Performance Center, and the opening act was Johnny Cougar, not John Cougar, No
Johnny
Mellencamp for a number of years, but Johnny Cougar.
Ain't Even Done with the Night is one of my favorite songs ever.
It's a great song.
That song.
I think that's my wife Deb's favorite John Cougar.
I love that song, man.
It's a great song.
Love that song. It's a great song. So, one of our viewers, Gloria Restano, longtime friend. I think we dated. That's a long story between me and her. I love Gloria. She and I agree that Courtney Love. I love Courtney Love. I don't care what anyone says about her. You can try to dog her. You can try to say whatever you want about her. Who cares if she stole Kurt Cobain songs or didn't? Who cares if people think she's the Yoko Ono of grunge? I don't care what anyone says. I love Courtney Love. I think she had a lot of balls when she stood up against Harvey Weinstein and then got totally blasted out of Hollywood for doing it. She was the one that set that ball rolling. I think Courtney Love has she's had a lot of demons, still does, but that album by Hole, that second album, Live Through This, is a fucking blockbuster. That is one of the best albums of the 90s, and that's saying a lot. Live Through This by Hole is one of the best albums of the 90s. So I give Courtney Love. But that's not my pick who I want to talk about.
Wait a minute. Do you have a favorite cut off that record?
Doll Parts is a great song. What else? There was Doll Parts. There's Live Through This.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, the whole. That's a perfect album from beginning to end. It's a perfect album. Every song is good. You know.
Yeah, the tough thing about Courtney Love is she's over the top. I mean, in some regard, she's almost a caricature of somebody that's over the top. And I get it. She was a messed up individual in heroin, and people call her a hanger on, and some people even accuse her of having Kurt Cobain killed, which I think is a bunch of horse shit.
Yeah.
But you don't ascend to that level and have that type of popularity without some talent.
Yeah, she could play the guitar. She had a great voice. She had that voice, that grunge voice for a female. She broke it out. But I want to get to this person, this lady, this woman, this amazing female artist that is so, and you're going to agree with me. This one we will never have an argument on. I am a huge fan of Joan Armatrading. I don't think Joan Armatrading ever got the again, another one who didn't get the push in the United States. She's from England. Her career spans 50 years. 19 albums, studio albums. I don't know, 9 or 10, live and / compilation albums. She is just such a talent. She was on Saturday Night Live in '77. She was season 2, episode 2 musical guest, and she sang "Love and Affection." If you want to hear what I consider in the realm of perfect song, a perfect song, go YouTube Joan Armatrading "Love and Affection," whether it's just the regular video, or it's a concert video, or what's the guy's name that was with Squeeze that does his own? He does a show over in England.
The piano player there.
Yeah,
Jules Holland.
Jane, Jules Holland. If you see her sing that on Jules Holland, there's no way that song is ever done badly. Joan Armatrading is. So I was introduced to her through an old girlfriend, and her sister, had turned her onto it. So she turned, and this was 1980. So I was like, into the scene, the Rolling Stones, some girls came out a year earlier, yada, yada, yada. So this girl turns me on to Joan Armatrading's album, Me, Myself, and I, which was a kind of a new version of her. I love the album. I still have the album. We break up a year later or so. Joan Armatrading comes to the Orpheum Theater. I take my then new girlfriend, Amy O'Brien, and we go see.
So you have a whole other list that you have to go through.
So we go to see her at the Orpheum, Joan Armatrading. Great show. And who's there? But the girl who introduced me, the old girlfriend, was there. Nothing happened, thank God. But Joan Armatrading, in 2007, she came out with an album, Into the Blues, debuted at #1 on the Billboard Blues chart. The first UK female artist to ever do that, right? But she's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the Go-Go's are nominated. A woman with a 50-year career, but again, didn't really break through in the United States, so I guess they don't.
Do you know why she didn't break through in the United States?
Well, she did, but she just never made it big. Why?
She had the same issue as Phoebe Snow. They did not know how to market her. Which is
Yeah.
really an injustice on a number of different levels.
She's
in
so
a bunch of
talented.
different ways.
You know, they tried to say, "Oh, Tracy Chapman is the next Joan Armatrading." You can't be the next anything when the original is still pumping out albums.
By the way, that show that I had mentioned to where we saw Joni Mitchell with the Police and all that, Joan Armatrading was on that bill as well. She played in the afternoon and she was phenomenal. I'll tell you, dreadfully underrated guitar player.
Oh, I was gonna say, well, go check out her video. One of the videos for that blues album that she came out with, Into the Blues. She played it. Where was it? What's the big festival over in England? The big one. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Not Nebworth. Not Nebworth. The other one. Anyways, regardless. But go YouTube Love and Affection. That is a phenomenal song, man. And like April Bernard said, a pure voice.
Glastonbury.
Yes. She was on the jazz stage. She was on the jazz stage in 2008, actually. She did, But Joan Armatrading, like April Bernard agrees with me, one of our viewers, never got the props she deserved. But go listen to Love and Affection. You can't go wrong. So if I didn't get to her, I would have been pissed at myself. So you can take the last one, and then we're going to move on to the final segment of the show.
Well, I don't know if I want to go into another one. I don't want to shortchange anybody, but I guess I really have more of a question for you, and this isn't really diving into one particular artist, but knowing that we were actually going to tackle this catalog, we're talking about Phoebe Snow and Janice Ian and Joni Mitchell and Pat Benatar and Patti Smith. Did you by any chance actually happen to listen to any contemporary music to see if you could bring somebody new into the mix? Because I'll tell you, I
did last week when I mentioned Jessica Lee Mayfield, and I did that last week. I just like to go, me, I like going deep dive backwards. I like bringing these people back to the forefront as much as I can for how many listeners we have. I hope people listen to. Oh, by the way, every week now, Jack and I put together our playlist of people we mentioned during the show. I'll be putting that the milk crates and turntables playlist on Spotify, and I'll be putting it on Facebook tomorrow. I'll send it out. So.
Yeah, in any event, the reason that I mentioned that is I think one of the fun things about actually doing this show is that I know for me, and I'm sure it's the same for you, it kind of pushes you to go out and explore and to listen to different things. And so I spent, the last, week kind of, diving into Joni Mitchell's, catalog, but also intentionally listening to, some newer folks. So I listened to Mitski, I listened to Lizzo, I listened to, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, just to see that music or to hear that music a little bit, more because I wasn't that familiar with it. I have to tell you that Lizzo album is fantastic. It is, hip hop influence, all over it, but, big presence, big sound, big production. I really found that to be a fun fun record, and I can't wait to go and see her live. But if you have an opportunity and you're open to hearing a little bit of hip hop, that was a great record. Thank you to my daughter Vanessa for turning me on to that.
All right, before I forget, I got a message this week in regards to the Go-Go's. Okay, I'm going to play it into the mic. I'll hold it up to the camera. It's on my phone as I'm showing the viewers. All right, I'll show the still shot of the video. All right, see middle-aged woman sitting on the top of a table or something, and all the vinyl records behind her with the guitar next to her. So I got this message. I'm just gonna play it. So here we go.
Left you speechless.
Well, it certainly did. Let me make sure the volume's up. Here we go. All right. So listen to this.
Hey, Scott. I have something here I need to read you. I was given this script to read to you, okay? So hang on. Gina here from the Go-Go's.
Oh.
Congrats to you and Jack Calabrese on the Milk Crate and Turntable podcast. I know Jack's been pushing for the Go-Go's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you, not so much, Scott, not so much, right? Well, we shall see, brother. Good luck, and fuck you, Daddy. I love you so much, Scott. I can't wait to meet you. Bye-bye, darling.
That is a phone drop right there. I can't believe Gina's shocked from the Go-Go's. God, she said, fuck you, Daddy, to me. I love her now. How can I not root for them now? That's that. I don't know. I can't, but I want to now. I really want to. So
you don't have to. They're getting in.
Okay, but that was unbelievable. All right, now let's get into the last segment of the show. What do you got? This is where Jack breaks out his week's album /download, and then I break out my albums /downloads.
So I will share, just a couple that I had actually purchased. So again, I'm still in the midst of kind of learning about and exploring jazz, and the first one that I actually picked up was Inventions and Dimensions by Herbie Hancock. Great record on the Blue Note label. This is, again, one of the real advantages of today's technology is that you have the opportunity to listen to it on something like Spotify before you actually invest in it. But I think it's an amazing record, and love that I did it. In sticking with the spirit of our theme this week, and knowing that you and I both share our love for Chrissie Hynde, last year, the Pretenders actually put out a new record. And on YouTube, there are a couple of guys and I think a couple of gals that actually do record reviews, and they kind of share their record collection. And on a few of those individuals, they regarded this Pretenders release called Hate for Sale as one of the best releases of 2020. I just started listening to it tonight, and it rocks, man. I'll tell you, it really rocks. The last thing, and again, sticking with our theme, is something that I don't know if have you ever heard of Record Store Day, Scott?
I think I picked up the alarm at the Orpheum Theater.
Yeah. So Record Store Day, for those people that don't know, is kind of an organization that promotes and supports local record stores. And one of the things that they do is a couple of times a year they have this thing called Record Store Day, and a lot of artists contribute unique releases, repressing, colored vinyl, really interesting things. And one of the things that I picked up on the last Record Store Day that I really kind of just got is the Pretenders live on their first tour at the Paradise in Boston.
Ah, nice score.
And again, this is essentially what they're playing is their first album, because they didn't have any other material outside of that. But, this is something that you can absolutely listen to on Spotify, and you should. You can actually hear what a ferocious band these folks were. They were just incredible.
I have no doubt. Yes, I have no doubt.
So those are my big picks for the week.
All right, so I picked the download this week. because getting the vinyl for this was kind of hard. And if I break out the other one, there's a group that formed in 2016, and they go by the name of Sonder, Sonder, and their album Into. All right, Sonder is a couple of producers and Baltimore-based singer Brent Fayez. They have such a great sound. It's described as minimal beats, blurry multi-tracked vocal harmonies, and a fragmented, futuristic take on traditional R&B. They are, if you want to hear some cool music, this is just some cool ass music. And it is definitely a real different take on R&B. Sonder, Sonder. The album is Into, and the single I'll probably be putting on the playlist tomorrow is called Too Fast. It's just some really cool music to listen to. So give that a listen if you want to try something new. Now I'm going to go with something old now, and I just broke right into the Meters. The Meters, Meters. The Meters were a New Orleans-based funk group. They were probably right there as one of the originators of funk. And the band is made up of Zigadou Modaleste, George Porter Jr., Leo Nocinatelli, and Art Neville of the Neville Brothers, right? So I think you know who they are, right? You've heard of the Meters?
Absolutely, sure. Big New Orleans band, right?
Well, yeah, New Orleans funk. It's funk with the New Orleans twist. They backed up Lee Dorsey. They've backed up Robert Palmer, Dr. John, Alan Toussaint. So they did their time, but on their own, I just downloaded the best of, because getting their vinyl it's hard. It's really hard to get the original and the reprints. So yeah, the Meters. Go out, go download it, go listen. Sissy Strut is their big hit. That's that kind of laid the groove. They broke around the same time as James Brown. So, and that's why I say James Brown he's the godfather of funk, if anything. He gets the godfather of soul moniker. But again, his shit is original funk. Now, he might have branched off and started getting more soulful, but the JBs were playing some funk. Again, that's why he always said, ain't it funky now, right? So the Meters' greatest hits, if you want to hear some good original funk, it's not like your George Clinton funk, and Sonder. Those are my two picks. And with that, buddy, we got a complete show.
A complete show, and we really just scratched the surface.
Oh my God, yeah. Women in music could go. We could do 5 episodes minimum.
It is a broad topic.
And that's what I liked about it. And I mean, still, I have some. I got a trivia question for you. All right, and we'll end it on a trivia question. In the audience, without Googling, can you tell me who Suzanne Ann Sully and Joan Catterall are?
Say that again.
Suzanne Ann Shelley and Joan Catterall.
I don't off the top of my head.
You know why you don't know? You only know them as the female voices for Human League.
Oh.
They had a lot of hits, right?
They had a lot of hits. I mean, come on, talk about an early staple on MTV.
So think about it. These two girls, part of this band, not like Kate Pearson and Cindy Wilson from the B-52s, who everyone knows who they are. These two girls remained in obscurity, but the band was enormous at one time.
But in all fairness, and I know that we're supposed to be highlighting, the women, but I couldn't tell you the male members of the Human League either.
It's only one. There's only one. Yeah.
Those girls and that guy, they were really good back in the day.
Jack, just remember, and we'll end it on this note. You were working as a waitress in a cocktail bar when I met you. So just remember that when this podcast makes it big. And I don't
You know
want to
what?
hear.
I have to tell you, Scott, even then, I knew I'd find a much better place, either with or without you.
Okay.
You goddamn son of a bitch.
Okay, buddy. So we're going to sign off now. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our viewers for participating. We tried to get all the messages in, all the chat messages in. They're still rolling in. We had 100 messages tonight. Women in Music was a good one, buddy.
Yeah.
This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. We just got on Breaker today, Pocket Cast, Overcast, most every platform that has a podcast. Find Milk Crates and Turntables. Share it with a friend, like our friend Steven Romano will be sharing it with people around the world. If you listen to podcasts, go in, download it, listen to us, leave comments, share it. We're not going anywhere. You guys are on the ground floor of something that me and Jack are very passionate about, and we're committed to it. And we're going to make this every week. This podcast gets that much better. So with that, thank you again, everybody, for the viewers, and thanks for listening. And we will see you next week. Jack, stay on. And
don't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me.
Listen, I'll put you back in that cocktail bar. All right?
Scott, while we were apart, I was human too.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much. Jack, stay on.